I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it for a moment before you move on. The life you're building right now, the career path that you are on, the goals that you are chasing, and the version of success you are working towards, whose definition is that? Because if you're completely honest, for many of us, the answer isn't mine. It's our parents. It was their hopes, their culture's expectations, the fear of being judged, our childhood wounds telling us what we need to prove. And I want to welcome you back to the Soul Leadership series. We are still on stage one, which is awareness, if you remember. I hope you guys do. And today we're going one layer deeper, okay? Because there is a dimension of awareness that is rarely ever spoken about, okay? There is a dimension of awareness that is rarely explored, and yet it affects us in everything that we're doing. The awareness of whose life you are actually living. Stay with me, guys. Here is something I've witnessed over and over again in my years of coaching. Someone comes to me, okay? They're absolutely successful by most visible measures. They have a career, they have a home, they have relationships, they even have achievements, okay? However, there is some persistent ache underneath it all, a sense of, is this it? There is a restlessness they can't name, a feeling that they've arrived somewhere, but it's the wrong destination. And when we begin to unpack it together, what we almost always discover is this: the life they built was not the one they would have chosen. It was the one they actually inherited. The one they assembled in response to pressure, pain, and other people's expectations. This is what I call unconscious living. And it doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It doesn't look like a crisis. It just looks like life. But something inside us knows that we've been on autopilot, which is something I mentioned in the last episode. So if you haven't watched that yet, go watch the first episode in the series about awareness, okay? Because when we're going to, that is, this autopilot, that's you've been executing a program that was installed in you a long time ago by people and experiences you never fully examined. And the most sobering part is this. Most people never realize this is even happening. They just feel vaguely unfulfilled, and they don't even know why. So how do you know if you're living unconsciously? I want to give you 3 signs. I'm back with my 3, okay, to look out for. Sign number 1. You feel a vague sense that something is missing, even when on paper things look fine, okay? You've achieved things, you've worked hard, but there's a hollowness you can't quite explain. That hollowness is often the gap between the life you're performing and the life you were designed for. Sign number 2. You make decisions primarily on what you should do rather than what aligns with your values, your calling, and your truth. Should is always someone else's voice. It's the voice of expectation, obligation, and fear of disapproval. When should is your primary compass, you are navigating someone else's map. Sign number 3. When you sit quietly and someone asks you, What do you actually want? You find it genuinely difficult to answer. Not because you don't have desires, but because you've spent so long filtering your wants through other people's opinions that you've lost touch with your own inner voice. You know what's expected of you, okay? You know that very clearly. You know what sounds reasonable, but what you truly want, that's harder. These 3 signs that I've just shared with you, they are a persistent sign of something is missing, right? It is decision making driven by the should and disconnection from your own desires. If any of those landed when I was saying it, I want you to know that awareness itself is a gift. Most people go decades without asking these questions. And I was one of those people, which is what led me to become a coach and a mentor and a life strategist, because it took years for me to become aware of myself. It took years for me to ask very hard questions, right? And stand in front of a mirror to understand why I was using should instead of who am I? Why am I? How am I? The why being the most important. Okay? Now, our illustration for today is going to get you thinking. So please sit with me as I explain it for you today. I want to give you this picture, okay, of what unconscious living looks like from the inside. Imagine you're in a car. Yes, we're in a car, guys. We're always in a car. You get in, you start driving, and somewhere along the way, maybe out of habit, maybe because you're tired, maybe because that's just the route you've always taken, you switch to autopilot. You're still going forward, you're still covering distance, but you're not really present for the journey. You're not making intentional choices about where to turn. You're just following the familiar route. And one day you arrive somewhere and you realize, this is not where I meant to go. I've been driving for years. I've covered so much distance, but I wasn't present for it. And I ended up somewhere I never actually chose. That is what it is like to wake up in a life you never consciously designed. And the awakening can feel disorientating, even grief-like, because there is a mourning of the time spent on the wrong road. But here is what I want you to hold on to, okay? Awareness is the moment you pull over, take a breath, and pick up the map for the very first time as yourself, not as who people needed you to be, as you. Let me give you 3 questions to help you begin to wake up, all right? Because it is about you waking up, right? And in order for you to reclaim your own narrative, you have to wake up. Again, this is about you writing these prompts down and doing the work. Question number 1. What expectations have I inherited from my family, my culture, my past that I have never consciously chosen for myself? I'm not asking you to reject all of them. I just want you to examine them. Ask, is this mine or was it handed to me? Question number 2. What would I change about my life if no one else's opinions mattered? Really sit with this one, because I don't want you to be reckless, but I want you to hear what you're actually thinking. Separate the noises, separate the voices, separate the noise of expectation. Dig deep. Question number 3. What do you deeply want that I've been afraid to admit, even to myself? Sometimes the truest desires and dreams are the ones we've buried the deepest because we decided early on that wanting them was just too risky, too big, or even too much to deal with or fight for. Now, these questions don't have quick answers, but the act of asking them and staying with them is the beginning of conscious, intentional living. And that is what soul leadership is ultimately about. Awareness is not a destination. It is the beginning of every other destination. When you can see your patterns, your inherited beliefs, and your unconscious programming, you become free to choose something different for yourself. You were never meant to live a second-hand life. No. God created you uniquely and fearfully and wonderfully in his image. So that means there's something very unique and something very special about you. Okay? But the most radical, courageous act of self-leadership is to author your own life with God. Okay? So in our next video, we're going to move to stage 2 of the soul leadership journey, which is identity. We're going to talk about who you truly are beneath the roles, the labels, and the wounds. And I promise you, it is one of the most transformative conversations we will have on this channel. So subscribe so you don't miss it. And please feel free to drop a comment in the comment box below. And I promise to check it out and respond, because I would love to know what's one expectation you've carried that you've realized was never actually yours. Let's open this up together. Let's dive in deep. Let's do the work, and we will be transformed. See you next week.